فلم تقتلوهم ولكن الله قتلهم وما رميت إذ رميت ولكن الله رمى وليبلي المؤمنين منه بلاء حسنا إن الله سميع عليم.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So, fantastic. So here we are with Brother Issam, Brother Omar, myself, and the very special Brother Abdussamed, or as you go by, Sammy. Fantastic. So today we're going to be talking about a little bit of Sammy's special profession. So before I introduce what we're going to be talking about today, I want to have you talk a little bit about what you do and a little bit to the audience of, I guess, what makes you so special today.
Yeah, all right. First, man, it was good to have you guys over. I want to say it's not a profession. I'm not a professional. I don't consider myself a professional or like any kind of master or knowledgeable person, but I do it as a hobby. I do it as like an aspiring bowyer. I do it to keep the Ottoman tradition alive and to keep growing as a bowyer. So yeah, I just started making bows and it started off as a hobby. I got into it when I was around 11 years old, and then just since then I've been shooting bows, and then when I was around in year 11, year 12, I got into making them and
Okay, yeah. Fantastic. So you mentioned you're a bowyer, and a lot of people might be hearing that for the first time. So a bowyer meaning a person who makes bows. Yeah. Awesome. So this is Archery Ascension, the four of us here plus a whole bunch of other people behind the scenes. And our whole idea and our whole vision is about transforming people's lives through the art of archery, and as well as the Sunnah arts also associated with it. So with archery comes making bows, comes shooting bows, comes retrieving and performing the art, competing in it, as well as horse archery and fighting. What else goes along with it? Wrestling, target shooting, swimming.
Yeah.
So all of that is in the idea or the vein of improving one's character. Yeah. And here we're going to be focusing on bow making. So the first thing I want to talk about tonight is your journey into becoming a bowyer and your passion for archery. You talked about it a little bit. You started it when you were 12. You picked up a bow. What does that look like? Yeah. Tell us a little bit of a story of how you first picked up a bow or saw a bow to actually, putting a string to a stick.
Yeah. So initially my interest for archery started off like I really used to be a kid that made slingshots, all these different kinds of homemade weapons, and I'd go shoot it around the neighborhood and stuff. And then after that, cheeky. I was that cheeky little kid that and my dad would always say stop making slingshots, and I'd still make them. But what happened was I started reading The Hobbit, and then I eventually read Lord of the Rings, and then I saw the movie, and then I was really caught by the character Legolas, and then his whole archer, like amazing master archer. Yeah, exactly. And then I saw that side of it, and then I don't know, I just got a spark from archery, and I begged my dad to get me this junior bow, and he said, look, I can't get it for you because it's you have to really it's not something that's simple. You have to actually learn how to do it. You have to take it seriously, do the safety aspect. So he took me to a 3-week course at the Illawarra archery range. And there they taught us the safety of the bow. It was a 3-week course where we did an intro and all that, and then after that he got me one of these junior fiberglass bows. So I just shot that for a while, and then eventually he got me the Samick takedown, which is like a universal, everybody's choice to go to as a beginner or whatever. And then since that, I've made bows as a kid. Up until the point I actually got my own takedown bow, I'd just cut off branches of trees and then get I'd run into the garage, grab my dad's the bricklaying measuring tape, or not tape, the string. I'd use that as a bowstring. I'd cut some branches off some trees, and then I'd fashion it into a bow. And then I'd go like yank some bamboo shafts or like arrows, and then I'd find that it didn't have the correct weight distribution, so I used to go and grab my dad's lead solder and then stick it to the end of it to make the weight. And we used to have like all these little battles between all the kids in the neighborhood with bows and arrows and spears and stuff like that. So I mean, that's how I grew up, getting into archery.
Understanding, I see.
Yeah.
Wow, you really literally just picked it up and
that's
down.
So
that's how
you were
was,
like 12.
Yeah, like from exactly 10 till 12 to 13, 14, those ages. And then I actually got into this whole Asiatic style archery when I was in about year 11. So that's when I started really researching like Asiatic cultures, especially the Turkic tribes and their cultures and the whole, horse archery aspect of it. And the bow that I got was just one of the ones off eBay that was only like $80, like one of those fiberglass, the Mongolian style ones. And then I just practiced with that for a few years. And then at the same time, like I used to play a lot of these fantasy style games. Like I've been a fan of Lord of the Rings, the Elder Scrolls. That kind of stuff, the fantasy genre. So I tried to incorporate that fantasy style into actually bow making. So the way I started bow making was actually through the fantasy genre, like where I tried to replicate these bows as like functional bows. So then, that's where I started. And
so you're looking at Legolas's bow. These hectic bows, and you're like, would that actually work in real life?
Yeah, exactly. And I'd think like, how would I make it work in real life? And then it was only when I got into year 11 year 11 and year 12 where I started studying like the actual physics of the bow, or how a bow works, or what's tillering and all that stuff. And it was only in my first year of uni where I started thinking, all right, I'm gonna actually make one, like a fantasy style bow. How am I gonna do it? So I did a lot of research. I would save my money. I'd go spend it on materials, and then after I get those materials, I'd break it, and then I'd be like, all right, that doesn't work. Let me try a different method. So I went through, a lot of methods, a lot of materials, a lot of like money and time, and just trying what works, what doesn't work, experimenting. And then eventually it just kind of led me into like dabbing into a bit of all cultures of archery. So like, the longbow style, Mediterranean style, Egyptian bows, Turkish bows. And then from there, it's kind of brought me to my own ancestry of the bow. Like, because I never grew up knowing that, the Ottomans or the Turks had a bow culture, or, they had this system of, archery that was so advanced. It was only up until maybe 5 years ago or something like that, where I actually found out that, the steppe cultures, the Asiatic cultures are very advanced in making and constructing these bows. And, my own ancestry and heritage, like being Turkish and that, it actually like has a lot to do with the bows. And Islamically, like as I started to learn more about my religion, I started to see that archery actually has a massive, place in our religion. So, putting all that together, I've kind of put the fantasy stuff on hold, and I've thought, I really want to focus on, the way my ancestors did it, that heritage that is, the Islamic tradition, the Turkish culture, the Ottoman culture. And then that's what's brought me to hornbows.
That's a pretty incredible journey, all the way from starting picking up sticks and strings to actually going and discovering more about your own culture, which actually moves into the next topic really, really well. So recently you had a trip to Turkey. That probably really revived a lot of stories, a lot of discovering of your own tradition. So we'd love to hear a little bit more about what you learned when you were over there.
Well, it was amazing because the last time I went to Turkey was in 2014, but it wasn't with the same mindset that I went now. So now I had this kind of thirst for just any kind of knowledge regarding, Ottoman archery. So the way I planned the itinerary was, we'd go visit all these historic places, and we went to touristy places as well, but most of the places we went to were related to, the Museum of War, the Topkapi Saray, which is, where all the royal stuff was kept. And when I went there, it was just completely mind-blowing, looking at the weaponry that these people crafted, and just looking at the accuracy, the absolute detail in the work. You think these are artists, these are craftsmen that have dedicated their lives to this. You can't get a machine to do it. I mean, you probably could, but it's not going to have the same art, that passion. It doesn't evoke that same feeling. So when you look at it, you just think, wow, this is amazing. I look at the arrows, I look at the bows, they're just so beautifully crafted, made. I look at the blades, the swords, and it was there that, kind of sparked this mentality of mine where, I really wanted to focus on the Ottoman bow. So I love all bows, but when I visited Istanbul, to me it was look at what, people have achieved, the Ottomans have achieved. I went to the Süleymaniye Mosque. I saw the architecture. I saw the way they, crafted, even, doors and the motifs and the, all this gold leafing and inlay. And to me, it was just I want to keep that alive, or I at least want to bring a piece of it back with me. So at that point, I kind of thought to myself, I'd rather try and be a master at one thing than try and be average at heaps of different stuff. So that's when I thought to myself, I'm going to put everything aside. I'm just going to focus on honing one particular type of bow. And for me, that's the Ottoman bow.
That's pretty incredible. Yeah. So we definitely see this as a bit of a reviving of the craftsmanship of not only just bow culture or just Turkish culture, but the whole spiritual element of developing and learning and constructing an incredible tool, utility, which is the bow and the arrow. So I'm sure there's a lot of people out there, myself included when I was a lot younger. I was wondering, bows are something that's cool and will always stay cool, and there's so many, I guess, so much information out there in terms of what is bowmanship, what's a good bow, and at the same time, there's not enough information of what you want. How do I actually get started? How do I start making my first bow? So for everyone out there, including myself and a lot of the people at the club, how can we get started? How can we also revive bowmanship from our own culture and Turkish culture specifically?
I'd say just start with something basic, because that's really how I started. I started with just any wood. And, I had to break a few, ruin a few as a kid or as a teenager to realize, there's something called tiller, sticks just don't bend like that. So I had to figure that out. But then as you start to get a feel for the wood and then the tillering and the actual, the work of it, you start to get an understanding of how the materials work. So then at the same time, it's important to just, hop on YouTube and type in, how to make a self bow, how to make this, how to make that. There's a lot of craftsmen online that I would consider just masters. I've learnt a lot from them. For example, Clay Hayes, on his series on how to do self bows. There's a lot of videos online that show you the process of making the Ottoman bow. The thing is that it can be vague because there's a lot of details that need to be put in, and it's impossible to put all of it into a video. So if you want to hone a really complex kind of bow, like an Ottoman bow, then I think starting with the absolute basics is necessary to just understand how the bow works. As in starting with even, just a really bad wood, bow wood, just to even break it and see, how it bends, how it works, how to file, how to use the draw knife, how to do all these things. Starting with just a very basic design, and then over time, making it more and more complex.
That's really makes a lot of sense. Do you have any specific resources or mentors that you would really recommend people check out?
For example, on the Ottoman bows, I did a lot of research on it, and to be honest, for anyone who wants to get started, reading Adam Karpowitz's book, the Ottoman bow, he goes through a lot of data, and he also talks about like a lot of his own experiences, because he, you know, is in making Ottoman bows. Yeah, so he makes them. He's considered like a very, very. I'm not sure which country. But yeah. But he's considered a very knowledgeable person in this area. So an absolute must for someone who wants to get into, you know, even researching Turkish bows is that book, because he's one person that's been trying it, that's been doing it, that's been researching, that's been pushing the boundaries, and then relaying his knowledge onto us. And then saying, look, you know, I tried this has worked. And he's actually taken from, you know, the real bow dimensions from museum originals.
Okay, wow.
And then use those dimensions to replicate it. So, I mean, there's a lot of knowledge that we can take from people, from masters and from very knowledgeable people like that. Okay. So, I think having a good source of knowledge like that is absolutely like key, because you can try all you want yourself. You know, I can grab 2 pieces of wood and then splice it together and then glue it, and then it breaks, and I could do that to 100 bows, you know. But it's just trial and error. Whereas this knowledgeable person has already done it. He knows, and he's reconstructed it, and he knows what works. He's already tried it. So it's important to just read from them, gain their experience, and then try and apply known techniques yourself. That
makes so much sense. Yeah. I remember hearing that really is the traditional form of passing down knowledge, not just in a lot of, you know, specifically in the Muslim culture, but in definitely a lot of Asian or ancient cultures as well, is that having a mentor and passing that knowledge down to other people, which is definitely something which I feel that you'll have the opportunity to do now. So when it comes to before I pass it off to the more casual part of the conversation where everyone will jump in, 2 questions is, what is your vision for Archery Ascension in your role? You know, what do you feel you can really change or you can do to transform not just the people who are involved, but the overall, you know, culture and nature surrounding bow making and archery in general? And how does this tie into your Muslim culture? And what do you feel, you know, Islam, Muslims really say about this task of bow making and passing it on? So your vision, and what does it say about your Islamic culture?
All right. So my vision is, it wasn't solidified until I went to Istanbul, and then I came back. That's when I was really adamant on focusing on the Ottoman bow. My vision is just to do my best to learn the techniques and to keep the tradition of Ottoman bow making alive. If it's just, you know, like, I'm not saying I'm an advanced craftsman or I'm a professional. I'm learning, but it's that learning process that keeps the tradition alive, you know. Whereas there's people all over the world, you know, Japanese bowyers that keep their tradition alive. I'm in Australia. I'm an Australian, and I have, you know, the Turkish cultural background. I'm a Muslim. So it's trying to just merge all these things together. It's trying to merge my, you know, the Ottoman heritage, the Islamic heritage, and say, and, you know, enrich the overall archery community, and saying, you know, it's not just Mediterranean draw. It's not just English longbows. It's not just Yumis, you know. We've got, you know, there's the Ottoman bow as well. And then it's offering people a chance to be able to see how they work, to be able to pick one up and go, you know, this is how it feels, this is how it is. So that's my vision. I want to have a piece of, you know, Ottoman Islamic heritage in the archery community here in Australia.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. And for the second question, can you remind me?
Yeah, so how does this relate to Muslim culture, archery in general, and I guess what it means to you?
To me, it's a sacred art, because the Prophet ﷺ, he talks about, you know, archery a lot. You know, he tells, you know, the right that the son has over his father is that the father teaches him swimming, horse riding, archery, and these, I can't remember which.
It's wrestling. Those amongst others, yeah.
And there's there's other things where strength lies in archery. The son of Adam has never picked up a weapon that has been excelled by the bow. So he obviously loved the bow, and obviously I'm trying to be the best Muslim that I can, to try and follow the Prophet ﷺ's example the best I can. I consider him to be the best of humanity. So, and finding that he values archery as well, and he has such a connection to it, is just more, it's more dear for me. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. To keep it alive and to keep it going. So, and the thing is that bow making, it really teaches you a lot of virtues. I'm not saying it's strictly Islamic virtues, and only Muslims can learn from it. But I'm saying it teaches you a lot of virtues that in Islam it goes hand in hand. For example, like patience, perseverance, determination. Focus. So if you really lose focus, if you don't empty your mind, it's the same as shooting. If your mind isn't empty, if you're not focusing, and if you've got other things on your mind, you will make a dangerous error. You might lose a finger. For example, I was on the bandsaw. My mind slipped off to something that had happened earlier, and I sliced my finger to the bone, had to get an operation, all that kind of stuff. So it teaches you to focus. It teaches you patience, because you're not going to succeed on the first go. It's going to take, maybe you're going to break 10 bows. You might break 50 bows. It's going to take, maybe $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 in materials. You're going to keep trying. But if you give up the first time that you pick the bow up, or you try to make the bow, if you fail, which you are going to fail, everybody fails in bow making. If you take that and go, well, stuff it, I'm not going to do it anymore, it hasn't worked out for me, then you'll never succeed. And that teaches you patience, because you're going to break it, you take it as a lesson, you start brand new, and it ties into the next one, determination and perseverance. You have to have determination, as in, if you fail or you hit a hurdle and you just stop and think, stuff this, I'm not going to do it again, it's not going to work. You have to constantly keep going. There's been nights where I've done all-nighters just trying to tiller a bow, or just trying to put, the lacquer on it and get this effect, or, trying to finish it to this quality or something like that. And you have to be determined, because it really is a patience game. It's going to take a lot of patience from you.
That's really incredible. So those virtues that you learn through bow making not only help your bow making, but you as a person. Yeah,
for sure.
There's something I think I really want to hear everyone here talk around the table. We have some very, very esteemed people around the table, and I think they'd all love to do some chatting with Sammy. So we'll just go around and we'll just talk to someone. Right here we've got Omar Hanifa, who's the president of Archery Ascension. Who's really the brains, and I guess this is his brainchild. So
I don't know if just the brains, maybe your pretty face and hardly that.
I love the praise, but
that's it. Sammy, I had a question for you just listening to you talk now, because I know you mentioned that almost every culture has like a bow and arrow tradition, but you're really amazed by the Ottoman tradition for like a huge amount of reasons. I know when we did the masterclass together, the archery masterclass last year, Brother Ahmed was saying that like the Japanese perfected the katana, the Ottomans perfected the bow. Can you tell us like what is it that makes the Ottoman bows special, like compared to?
Well, I mean, like all claims like of perfection, whatever, it's subjective to every culture, you know. The Yumi is perfect for the Japanese, but to me, the Ottoman bow is perfect because it just ties in so many different elements together, and it's so effective to use in warfare. For example, you know, the cavalry, light cavalry, flight archery, exactly. And for me, it's just the complexity of achieving it. Like, I've made bows that I love. You know, for example, I love the self bow design. It's simple, but I love it. I really do. But for me, the real challenging part is the journey. So everything I've done is kind of like a journey, you know. Every bow I've completed is kind of like a journey. With these Ottoman bows, it's a long process from start to finish. So with the selection of the wood, with the cutting and seasoning of the wood, with the storing of the wood, and then making sure that, you know, it doesn't check. You have to seal it. You have to keep it in a damp, you know, place that doesn't see light or sunlight or heat. All these little things, you know, you have to use this sinew. You can't, you know, you should mix the glue with this ratio of fish glue and hide glue, and all these little things coming together. At the end of a year and a half, you've got this bow in your hands.
So for people out there who don't know much about bow making, why don't you explain as to why making a traditional bow takes a lot more patience than making, for example, a laminated bow? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's a whole next level of, because for example, someone can make a laminated bow and it might take them just a couple of weeks, and they can use it straight away. But you know, a traditional Ottoman bow which uses horn, fish glue, sinew, all these things. Why don't you go into why that takes a lot more patience?
Yeah. Fair enough. Perfect question. The thing is, I've worked with a lot of different materials like fiberglass, carbon fiber, you know, laminates, solid fiberglass, you know, resin poured bows, stuff like that. The good thing about laminates is it can be really made efficient, where, like you say, it can be done in like, you know, a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever. It's much more fulfilling for me to just have control over every single step. You know, for example, fiberglass, it's not that reactive of a substance. So when you put it on the bow, like, there's less that can go wrong. As in, it's more, how do I say? It's more sturdy or stable. Whereas,
predictable.
Yeah, exactly. It's more predictable. And if you get the design of the bow right, it's going to end up in a stable bow. You're using, modern glues, modern materials, and overall it's just more stable. What's fulfilling for me is that with laminate bows, you do get wood selection. You have to select the right wood. Maybe not to the same extent as self bows and horn bows, but with the horn bows, so I have to source the correct wood, which is extremely hard to do in Australia. I have to, talk to a lot of farm owners, individual people, chase up. Exactly. Sure. Yeah, or import it. And the thing is that you can make it out of board bows, but that's not traditionally how it was done. Traditionally, the Ottomans would go out and cut, Tartarian maple, and then they use that and then, cut the staves and then use that green wood, bend it green, and then, so it's just, there's a lot more sensitivity with the material. So I have to source the material. I have to then cut it and then prepare it and then dry it without checking it. And, for example, quite recently, I cut my own elm staves. And the issue with that is that, hello.
Come here.
Yeah. The issue with that is, I got initially about 6 bows worth of timber, and then you cut through it and you realize, there's a knot here, it's checked here, it's cracked here. So out of those 6 bows, I've only had one successful bow core that's been made from that, because it's such a difficult. You need the perfect wood to be able to do it. Then after that, you need the horn, which is even more difficult to source sometimes. So
even after that, with a laminate bow, when you glue it up together and it dries, that's it. You shave it all down, you shape it and everything.
Exactly, yeah.
There. But with a horn bow, traditional horn bow, you've got to apply the sinew and you've got to do different steps, and these steps can take months.
Yeah, of course. Like, for example, you calculate the sinew roughly according to the third of the weight of the bow. But it really depends on the design. If it's a more stressed design, or if it's a more, longer stable design, But it's like you said, even with hide glue, there's certain mixtures you can do. You have to account for, you know, the temperature, the climate, the humidity, these kinds of things. Whereas with modern glues, you don't really have to account for that kind of stuff. And there are a lot of things that can go wrong with making a horn bow.
There's sorry, I'll just butt in there. There's an incredible comparison. I've heard a few of our mentors, and it was also in the Arab archery book. Like the bow, the traditional horn bow, it really is a living thing. Not only like the amount of living things that go into it. You've got the tree itself. You've got the animal that had the horn. You had the fish. You've got the sinew. You've got at least 4 or 5 different elements of the earth, which all come together in this thing. Even when you're using it, I'm sure when you're constructing it, it feels like a living thing as well. Everything changes, you know, from the beginning to the process. That sinew changes, that hide glue changes, the fish glue changes, the wood completely changes. When you're shooting it, it's really becomes an extension of you in many, many ways.
The thing is exactly like that. And the perfect way that I've heard it explained is the way, you know, Brother Ahmed from Maidan Archery has explained it. He goes, the wood is like the bone, and then the horn is like, you know, the sinew is like the muscle, and the horn is like, I can't remember how it went, but the comparison was good. It was a beautiful
bone, the muscle,
and then the blood.
The
blood was the glue, and then the horn. I can't remember what it was, but
skin, but it wasn't skin.
No, it was organ. Maybe I can't remember what it was, but
I'm
disappointed.
Oh my god! How dare they teach?
No. But wallah, it was such a beautiful like example, and it's so true. The analogy is so true because you've got the core, like the skeleton made of wood, and then you've got the compression, which is done by the horn, and then you've got the tension that's done by, you know, the tendons, like the ligaments, and the
sinews, the blood,
and the hide glues, the blood. The crazy thing is that even though you finish this bow, you pick it up, you can't just go and string it, you know. You have to warm it up, and you have to consider the humidity, you know, when you're making it. You have to keep it, you know, in a certain humidity. You can't just go and take it, you know, for example, from a hot room and then bring it into, you know, a freezing cold room without properly warming it up and then properly balancing it. And then even when you do string it up, it can kind of go, it can go unbalanced, and the shape can change. So what you need to do is just keep balancing it until it changes. And then as you even shoot it, you have to keep controlling it, looking for, you know, string twist, just stuff like that. And then over time, like, you have to balance it and correct it. You know, it might even take like 15, 20 minutes. Like, to string this, it took me about 10 minutes of warming it up and checking it, you know, pulling it halfway. So it is almost living. You have to warm it up. You have to, you know, consider all these things. So
you wanted to have a look at some of these bows. Do you have any other questions or things you want to talk about before we?
So just a quick one. So because making traditional Ottoman or traditional any type of bows, like we have the modern way of making bows, you know, laminate bows. You pretty much just slice up pieces of wood and then you just glue it all together, and it's still a very tough process, but it's
cut some wood, glue it together.
As in the modern day laminate bow, you know, like for example, like an Ali bow or a V bow. All it is just, you know, a few pieces of laminate, and they glue it all together, and then they obviously trim it down. What I'm trying to say is that an Ottoman bow or a traditional bow, which includes, you know, sinew and glue and all these things, the process is so much more harder. It's so much more unpredictable. So why do you go through that harder process in order to make when you can just, you know, you could let's say it'll take you 15 years to master making a horn bow. It'll probably take you only 2 years, or I don't know, I don't want to insult anyone, maybe a few years to master just a laminate bow, which we have, but obviously they didn't have in those times. So why do you go through the trouble and the effort to try and master something so difficult when you've got such an easier alternative?
Good question, man. I've thought about that question like so much. It just comes to like your perspective. I guess if you're if your aim is to make a bow that's stable, that everyone can shoot, that everyone can have fun shooting constantly, you know, without worrying too much about moisture condition, humidity and that, then if that's your goal and if you want to kind of make a bit of a living off it, you know, then that might be your goal, to focus on laminates. Whereas my goal isn't really, like, I'm not trying to make money off it. I'm not trying to make a bow that, you know, is stable enough for, you know, hundreds of people to shoot or thousands of people to shoot. Really, I'm interested in the journey, like, as in, I'm not really worried too much about the end product, but I like seeing things come together over time. So it's like, you know, you work on it a bit by bit, and then when you get it, like when you finally finish it after a year or a year and a half or whatever, it's just so much more rewarding. It's like fasting, yeah? It's like fasting. It's like you go through Ramadan fasting, you know, trying to do your best to just not sin, to avoid, you know, harmful desires, and then the food, and then, you know, trying to just tame yourself. And you know, like, the reward for this is going to come, you know, 1 month later. But when you get the reward, it's like, wow, you know, I've accomplished this. So the journey is, like, much more important than the reward, like, in my perspective, like, looking at the bows. So, and I've always been the type of person that, like, I've tried to do things like the harder things. So I feel a sense of actually accomplishing it. So, I mean, I've tried to make laminates, but for me, it's just not rewarding. Like, I learned to just love working with natural materials, man. Like, I still like shooting laminate bows. I just don't enjoy the feeling of it as much. Whereas with wood, it's natural, you know. I started off with all these power tools. Now I only use hand tools, you know, besides the bandsaw. Like, so you learn to love the journey, like the process of it. And then it's just, it comes down to your perspective, how you look at it, you know. I just want to accomplish it. I want to really be able to, you know,
feel what they felt.
Yeah, exactly. When, like, you know, yeah,
100%.
Yeah.
You won't get that sense of accomplishment. It's a different sense of shooting when you sort of just, like, it turns from just a tool to a piece of effort and blood and sweat and tears when you know what goes into making it, and especially when you're the one who's gone into making it. You know what I mean? You don't appreciate something that someone's picked up. Like, if I just went and picked up a bow, and just started shooting, and I didn't have any clue about how it got, you know, put together, or how much effort it took, I wouldn't appreciate shooting it as much. But when you go and you do it all yourself, and then you start shooting it, even if it's, like you said, even if it's just the crappiest bow you've ever shot, it will feel like the most amazing thing, because you started from a lump of timber sitting in your garage floor to something which can shoot an arrow, you know.
Exactly,
so
right.
It's way more rewarding. I know that feeling. 100%.
It's just funny because, like, you mentioned that, and then I remember when people, you know, I show the horn bow to people and they're really like, oh wow, it's amazing, and then they go to pull it, and then for me, literally, my heart drops at that moment. When somebody picks up my horn bow or any bow and goes to just, like, either inspect it or draw it, my heart drops. It's like, okay, how are they going to pull it? You know, are they going to use the right technique? Have they, you know, they're using the wrong side.
Like your baby.
Yeah, 100%.
Like your baby.
100%. Like, you'll see, right, Omar, you know, shoots some of the bows that I make every now and then. He pulls it back every now and then, and you'll see me just walk up to him and be like, bro, you know,
just
do it like this.
You go shoot Iron Man's bow.
How about you pick up that that one over there?
Yeah. No, it's not that. It's just like, oh no, you know, try to do it like this.
Very defensive.
Yeah.
Because it's a light.
Yeah.
It's a light.
I know my break stuff as well.
He gives all the broken bows to you.
It's good, man.
Rest in peace, Aquas.
Oh man. Yeah.
Cool. So, what's
what do we do now? We talked a lot.
Well, I guess I've just got something I want.
Yeah.
I guess all three of you guys to talk to, because I know one of the things that we spoke about on our trip to Sydney when we went to see Alan Camp. I guess you guys can talk a little bit about what you got out of that trip, and also just in general about, you know, like being producers instead of consumers.
You can hold the microphone. I'm talking.
Yeah.
Just bring that.
Well, first off, it was really awesome. If I'm allowed to talk a little about Alan Camp, he's an amazing guy. And for those listening online, Alan Camp is very esteemed, not just archer, but a bowyer as well. And he's originally focused on self-bows, I think. Is that correct? Longbows. Yeah, so he's focused on longbows. And when we visited him, we found him making Ottoman bows, and then we were wondering how the transition went. And he was also making laminate bows, so he gave us a really good example in contrast to our conversation here of what goes into making a laminate bow. And he really just, when he said he discovered the Turkish bow, he was just amazed by it. He just kept saying the word physics. He was just physics of it is just incredible. And not only did he use, he thought it was amazing, but he even used his own intellect and what he learned from making long bows, and kind of made a hybrid version of them, and made his first incredibly well-to-shoot laminated bow. But before we go into, I just want to share a little bit of story. We were talking about living things. We're talking about collecting it. Alan Camp, he grows bamboo. And we've tried for the last couple of months to grow our own bamboo. I think after we've seen the first couple set of seeds not germinate, or the first several little shoots either get eaten by our horses or just die of dehydration, we found this incredible forest, and he just go crazy. And we were running through mud and dirt and flooding and getting the shovel and digging up little kids. Hopefully, I've yet to see the bamboo. I don't know how it's doing. Okay, that's another conversation then.
We won't talk about it.
Well, at the time, we were very excited to have our own bamboo forest. But it was an incredible experience. He was an amazing guy. He was very, very humble. The fact that he quickly, there's a lot of, I would say, systemic racism or pride when it comes to a lot of people's culture and heritage. But when he just found different bows of different cultures, he was just like, I love them all. I'll learn how to make them all.
He was just absolutely amazed. I want to try and just to paint a picture for everyone, because Alan is not someone you're going to see online, on TV, on anything. He's just literally...
It's like one side. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So he's literally like an amazing bowyer, which if you see his bows, you won't believe that some guy in his backyard or in his shed in his backyard built these bows. He's actually like a master of what he does, and it's a different art form. It's not saying he's better than Sammy at what he does. He focuses on laminate bows, and he's absolutely amazing at what he does. So his how old is he now? He's 75 something. Yeah. So he's an older gentleman. He was a fitter by trade, so he knows how to use tools in his hands. He's been doing it for his whole life, and so he's literally made his own machinery in order to make making bows as easy as possible. He's literally got his own belt sander, his own thicknesser. He literally made a drum sander, for anyone who knows what that is. He made his own drum sander, and I said, why did you make this? He said, because in my time this didn't exist. So he literally, you could say he invented it, but it was ridiculous. He made his own drum sander to make the laminates for the bow. For the bow limbs, he created that so that he could get a consistent, thickness on his laminates every single time. So the process which he's come up with in order to make his long bows are just so refined, and they're so well done. It's ridiculous. So what he's done is he's taken all of those processes that he's come up with, and he's just like, okay, well, this is another laminate bow, just a different shape. So he started from scratch how he would by making a form, and creating the laminates out of it for the Ottoman style bow.
What's incredible is we had some feedback, especially by Ustad Ahmed Kharat. is that you'll never find a laminate bow like the ones that he's making, because the amount of detail
crazy.
that.
It's crazy. That's right. That brings us to a good... Alan Camp, the amount of effort that he takes into making his bows he doesn't take into consideration, I need to make this in this X amount of time so that I can make X amount of money. That's literally what makes his bows so special. The fact that he doesn't sell, like you won't be able to get one of his bows because he won't sell it to you. He doesn't think about, selling it or money or anything. That's why, and he takes a long time. He'll take, maybe 5-10 times longer than it should or would normally take to make a laminate bow, and that's why they're so well made, because he'll sit there and saying, this is a 1 mil out here, so he'll take that time, and that's why they're so well made, and that's why no one else, you won't see bows like his, because no one else is making bows without the time constraint in mind. That's why they're so
I have to second that, bro. I have to second that. Like, and coming from the perspective of a bowyer, like I've shot a lot of bows, I've made, a fair few bows, not a lot, but I've made a fair few bows. So like I appreciate when I pick up a good bow. I appreciate the workmanship that goes into it. Now I'm telling you, and I'm not even lying, man. I'm not I've got nothing to gain from him or anything like that. But I have never shot a Turkish laminate bow, and you'll agree, bro. I've never shot a Turkish laminate bow as good as his. Like I've picked up bows from some of the the best bow makers. I'm not gonna name just so there's no whatever, but just comparing the way his bow reacts when you shoot it, it's insane. He actually does the craziest physics calculations and this that. So what he's always talking about, the straight limbs and the efficiency of that, right? And it's so true, because it's so true.
I don't know much about it, but there's physics. This is all physics.
It is 100%.
There's something about having the straight limbs, and he just obsesses about it, and you can't.
I'll go into it, bro. So what it is basically the reflex deflex longbows, or the reflex deflex short bows, or whatever. It's the way it's designed. Like if you look at some of the shorter ones, like Big Jim's Thunderchild, or like the shrew bows, it's a reflex deflex, but when you actually string it, it's got straight limbs. What that means is there's an equal amount of pre-stress, and feel free to correct me or whatever, but there's an equal amount of pre-stress per inch of the limb profile. So because it's bent back in a in a circular, a reverse C kind of shape, as you pull it back and string it, it's not the traditional arc, it's more of a straight triangle kind of profile. And what that does is it's more efficient energy storage from the per inch. So each inch of the bow is doing it's already pre-stressed. So that's why he really loves it, and it really is true. That's why they're a lot faster, and also, not only that, you can draw it back a lot longer without stacking it.
I think one thing that was impressive is while a lot of people make bows for different reasons, and one of them would be the historical accuracy, make sure it looks like the same shape. He wanted to make the best bow, so he's always about the physics, and he knows what materials he's working with. So one of the details he mentioned is he buys laminate, and he buys fiberglass, and he buys laminate, and when he receives it, it's flat. And he was just I have to curve it in an opposite direction for it only to be curved in the other direction, and then it's only going to be pre-flexed.
Well, that's pre-stressed.
Exactly, pre-stressed. So he's if it just comes straight, just like I bought it at a resting position, then all the flex will be in it to drawing. Actually, and so he wasn't just focusing saying, I need to make the shape look like an Ottoman. He's they've got this really cool thing in this bow. I've got modern materials. I've got to actually use the modern materials to their fullest.
Well, a good demonstration is there should be a bow there, bro. You know the one with the string on backwards, the Ottoman one. Yeah.
Which made me
this camera. That one.
Which made me think.
No, that's alright. Yeah. Well, I'll show you what I mean by that concept, man.
Which made me think of something. If you engineer fiberglass that's already curved at rest, could you make it even better? But
well, that's the whole process of the pre-stressing. The thing is, if you lay the fiberglass in that shape, it might have the slightest difference in efficiency. It might be less efficient than a flat fiberglass sheet that's already pre-stressed in that in that position. So for example, what you mean by pre-stress is, I'll show the viewers as well, is this one here. Yeah. All right. So this is obviously Ottoman flight bow. It's called the Hilal Quram, which means it's a crescent form. There's two different forms. There's the Tekne Quram, which looks like a bow. It's over there somewhere, but we'll focus on this. So the Ottomans did this, and then they strung it together. Every time, like, you put a sinew layer, draw it closer together. Put another sinew layer, draw it closer together. So by the time this fully cures, the wood, the sinew, and the horn the wood doesn't do, it's just the shear strength. Sorry. What is pre-stressed is the horn and the sinew. So when it's already pre-stressed like that, and then you have to bend it all the way back, what that means is it's just utilizing more of the strength of the material. So when if you were to make this same bow but in a flat design and put horn and sinew, it's not stressing the horn and the sinew to its fullest capacity, which then would mean it's not going to perform to its fullest capacity. So when you put the sinew on and you pre-stress it, it's utilizing more of the capacity and the performance of the materials themselves, because it can take a lot of stress, man. Like horn and sinew can take a lot of stress. So that's why the flight bows, obviously for performance reason, were, stressed in that shape. And carrying that same concept through to, I'll just shut this over there, through to like modern bows, like Islam said, the guy knows his stuff. He's very knowledgeable.
I think he's been making it for 50 years.
He's been doing it for a long time. I would love to just sit and learn off him for like 5-10 years.
Okay. I'm just gonna say you missed out.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna put that out.
I know, bro.
We rub that in every single time.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, it was just for people's.
I get it, bro. It was good. I get it.
Yeah, no, it was me. I remember we drove up to Newcastle in Sydney to visit Alan Camp and see how he makes everything. So it was honestly.
Tell us a bit about like the whole experience, bro. Like what you guys did at the camp and
that kind of stuff. So basically, like, I just want to paint the picture for everyone, right? Just so that they can get a good idea about Alan Camp. So basically what happened is we drove to, I think the town that he lives in, Newcastle, is called Awaba. Yeah, and so we drove to his land, and it's just literally in the middle, like you're driving through these trees and forest. You think you're in like just the middle of a forest, and then you see you basically just see towering bamboo just growing like literally 15-20 meters tall, like out of control, and then you've got his house, his little humble house there, and then behind it he's got all of his land, and you can't really see much. It's just like trees and bushes and bamboo growing everywhere. And so when we arrived there, we entered through his front yard, and he was like, oh yeah, you guys are going to be, we were camping there for the night, so he's like, you guys are going to be camping in the back, so just drive around. And so basically we drove around the back of his land. I think I got footage of it so we can put it on the podcast. So we drove around to the back entrance of his land, and yeah, again, there's just bamboo lined on the fence and just different, I don't know how many species. Did you ask him how many species of bamboo he had?
I'm not sure, but if I count off the top of my head, at least... Because even that small enclosure with the clumping bamboo, 5, 6 plus the running one, 7, 8.
Yeah, he had at least, I would say, a dozen different species of bamboo. Some were just clumping, some were, running, and they were just amazing. So he greeted us there at the back entrance or the side entrance of his land, and he showed us where we're going to be camping for the night. And that's where his shed was. It's about 50 meters from his house, and we're just surrounded by native Australian trees, mixed in with bamboo, different species. I think he said he had black bamboo, Mudaki bamboo, which is the Mudaki bamboo is the bamboo that his preference for making bows out. He said that's the strongest bamboo to make bows out of. And so it was him and his little dog, and he showed us where we were going to be camping, and so we set ourselves up, and everyone was sort of setting up camp, and I sort of ran into his workshop because I was just so excited, and I was just like there like a Japanese tourist, just like taking photos of everything. It was just, I was so excited. It was crazy. His workshop where he makes everything. And so we basically set up camp for that day, and then what were we doing? We were pretty much just talking. Yeah,
that first day we did some shooting with. He set up, has a really awesome setup where, again to his attention to detail. He set up 5 meter posts, and not only did he just, if it was me, I would just chuck a number or put a stick in the ground, but he set up like a bow stand every 5 meters and every single run, so you can put your bow, you can put your arrows, and then go to collect.
That's what I love about him. He takes so much time and just thought and consideration to everything he designs and builds. Just even the small thing, just like the pegs that he puts in the floors for the 5 meter distances.
We spent a lot of that first day chatting, and then the second day was mostly through it. And if I talk about the attention to detail, we talked a little bit about his process and how he builds the bows. But one thing he always was really, really big about was jigs. Is that if there was a task he needed to make, he would build an entire tool for it just to achieve this little task. One of the examples is for his bow, the Awaba Wasp. He names each of his designs and puts it as you should as a designer. One of the things, he's got a little bit of fiberglass which is just on the tip of the siyas, and he said he couldn't get it right to just actually glue on properly and sand properly, so he needed to build a whole set of blocks and a whole set of jigs just so he could glue on this little piece of fiberglass,
just on the tips to strengthen it.
And it was just that when you realize that this person, he doesn't take the shortcuts,
No way.
Every single detail that he needs or that's required to make it the best he can, he will. And I think if there's any quality I'd like to get from him, it's definitely that one, the meticulously too,
And when you pick it up, man, it looks like top quality factory production.
Exactly right, 100%. You're like, which shop did you buy this from?
Exactly.
It's like you would not believe that his bows, they're literally, it's perfection. You can't actually pick it up and say, oh yeah, you can tell there's a little bit of lack of this, or it's a bit twisted, or it's immaculate. By eye, it's perfection. You can't spot anything.
And he's always improving with each one. Like even when he strung and we shot it, he would just say this angle, I need to change in my next design. I need to make that more curved.
That's what makes him so amazing. Like people can do things their whole lives, but the reason why they may not achieve such a high standard or become a master at what they do is because they're not constantly criticizing themselves and their designs and their processes. He does that, and he's been doing that for 50 years now, and that's why he is so good at what he does. And we have to hopefully one day bring him on the podcast so that we can
amazing.
So that we can do a podcast.
Want to do it.
That would be amazing.
Yeah, if he would be willing to, that would be so amazing. I
even feel bad just like talking about it here because it's one of those gems you see that's hidden away, and you just kind of it works best just there, and you have to work to find him or find people like that.
That's the thing, like as beginner bowyers, like I started off doing a lot of my research. Like I didn't have that many people to ask, so I went on YouTube, I did the internet, and a lot of it I did just trial and error myself. But like these people, like for example, someone like Alan, you can't search him up on Facebook. You can't look at find him through YouTube.
Just the landline.
But the thing
he's got his landline. He's got his own landline.
No, I'm telling you, but the thing is that he is such a wealth of knowledge, but you can't find it on YouTube. No. So it's, to be honest, that's kind of what I love about this whole craft as well. It's like, because you often hear me
treasure hunting to find information.
You often hear me complaining, like on my Facebook statuses saying, one thing that I find about today's world, the capitalistic world, is that everything is either machined, synthetically made, and every experience is like in front of our laptops. We can go on YouTube and have a look at how Sri Lankan culture is, or we can have a look at how Turkish culture is, or but it's very hard to actually go and experience something for the first time. So one thing I complained that was like that feeling of wonder and magic and journey is like you don't get it in today's world anymore. Like there's like everyone's already gone to every place, every corner of the world imaginable. So like one thing I love is when you come across these people, like you can't find it on YouTube, you can't find it, you know, anywhere, and you really have to try hard and, you know, try and track him down, try and, you know, just by word of mouth, and then when you do find him, it's just like,
yeah. You know, what's incredible though is you speak to people.
So why didn't you come?
This coming from the person who didn't join us on that weekend.
That's a mad reason, but I forgot.
I was so mad.
No. The reason was that I promised. Like we've had this.
You were making a boat.
Yeah, I was making a boat. Right? I had.
How ironic.
Originally, like, you know, the word got out, and this guy came up to me and said, "Look, I want this kind of bow." And then I said, "Look, you know, this is what I can do. This is what we can do." He wanted a bow that was 130 pounds, and you know, he could pull it. Right? He could pull it, and you know, we've just been going back and forth, and I feel like, you know, he's really motivated me and pushed me because it gives me a sense of urgency to finish this bow for him. But the only hurdle that I face is because I've never made one of these before, is constant trial and error. So I told him that, look, I'm going to try my best to have it ready at this time. He said, look, no stress, don't stress, whatever. But once I give my word, it's like...
Yeah, you're a tech, you have to honor your word.
It's just that thing, like, I don't want to disappoint the person.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, I don't want to keep, you know, delaying it and stuff like that. So I said, you know, I'm going to really push myself and try to finish this. And I had to sacrifice that for that. So...
Shout out to 130-pound guy.
That was the flex for this episode. We'll receive your sponsorship.
No, honestly, I can't wait for that bow to be finished. It's almost finished. Yeah. And when, you know, he picks it up and shoots it, I'm telling you, it is going to be something impressive. But
I'm looking forward to that. That'll be interesting.
Yeah.
Is this the one with the new material?
This the top secret.
Top secret.
We'll end it right here.
Forge in the mountains of Mordor.
No top secret material, bro. Fiberglass, blood, sweat, and tears, bro. That's the secret ingredient.
Yeah, for sure. That's incredible.
That's awesome. Do we have other questions?
I think that was it. Yeah. The one thing I was going to mention before is when you do find those special people, very rarely will they just freely share it, you know.
He's such a humble guy, and he's got absolutely, because he's got no he like, money's not a thing to him. He's like, I'll tell you whatever you want to know.
It's a bonus game.
He was just like, he'll tell you whatever you want to know, because he doesn't care about if you become a millionaire from it. It was just like, he was just so humble and so welcoming. Like, who do you know who would just be like, yeah, sure, you can come to my backyard and camp in my backyard, and I'll show you what I do, and you can ask whatever you want, and oh yeah, you want bamboo? Sure, dig it up and take it. He was just so nice, honestly.
To be honest, not only from like a bow and arrow making point of view do we get so much, but even just talking about Alan now and to people listening, like there's so much we can take from just how to be Muslim. Right?
Yeah.
And like, you know, Islam's talking about his workshop, and I'm thinking about, imagine the people that were working on those masjids in Turkey, and not just Turkey but across like the whole Muslim world. And like, I guess that, I feel like that's why it was so eye-opening and heart-opening for us.
Yeah, I guess I miss all that detail. I was I like a super designer perspective. Just touching a little bit on the amount of detail they put into it, I was looking at Uyghur culture, especially a lot of the thing, or even just general Central Asian culture, very close to Turkey as well. If you look at some of the constructions, every single thing, that like the pillar needs to be incredibly sculpted and perfectly carved. but then also not only the pillars, but the little alcoves and the rims, and also the bars and the beams. Every single thing needs to be detailed. But when I made a trip to Central Asia, they were trying to replicate that culture, but everything was factory made. And you could tell everything was from molds, and you can tell everything was, either injection molded or just, sculpted through a printer. And that amount of detail, I feel, is missing from this world. When you find people which are willing to put that meticulous amount of detail into actually producing these materials, you're wondering, okay, that really ties to ihsan, excellence in all things, excellence in yourself, in your character, but also the things you make, If you yourself want to be beautiful, all the things you make, should try to be beautiful. Fail those times, but make sure you've got a goal.
Exactly.
Inshallah. How do you feel we should do? Feel like wrapping up? Inshallah, we can probably make a couple of episodes out of this.
It's also we'll come together, brothers of the bowyer.
I think to be honest, like we have to like one of the other things for me while we're on the topic of people is like, when I first got into, Turkish archery or whatever, and, Asiatic archery, one of the people for me that was an inspiration, and like, the moment that I met this guy, I felt like I knew him for 5 years or 10 years or 20 years, and that's the vibe that I got off him, man. And his brother Ahmed.
From Meydan Archery.
Meydan Archery. Brother Ahmed from Meydan Archery, bro. Like, he's been a massive motivation for me to pursue the Ottoman archery as well. He's helped me, with the books, the sources, and the book that Adam Karpowitz's book, he gifted that to me. And it's actually very hard to get your hands on the book. Like, I didn't realize afterwards how hard it was to get your hands on it. So,
actually, sorry. Yeah, that reminds me, that's a very good point, and I feel very, very rude for not mentioning it up until now, so thanks, Sammy. But like that whole trip to Alan and everything, like we don't even know Alan personally. That was only introduced through Ahmed, and that was because Alan went to Ahmed's his club in Sydney, and so like a massive thank you to Ahmed. We have to thank Ahmed. Like, it really wouldn't be fair on us if we didn't thank Ahmed truly from the bottom of our hearts. That was one of the best weekends of my life personally. So I have to thank Ahmed Karat for organising an Allen camp, of course.
I remember when we went to Meydan Archery the first time that I ever went there, bro. I've had, brothers coming up to me that I didn't even know these guys, and they're like, bro, you know the guy that made that bow, mashallah, and I'm like, wow, these, I don't even know them, but it feels like I know them for like 10 years. That's right. And
I think like all of us, we've been to Sydney and we've stayed in his house. He's our own, like we're his like younger brothers or something. He's treated us like no different to his own blood. For everyone that's listening, check out Meydan Archery Club Australia. 100%. That's Ahmed's club. We'll start Ahmed's club, and he'll be coming down to Melbourne as well, and hopefully quite regularly.
I want to say one thing.
We're not letting him go back.
Oh man. No, like the second time that I went, it was the first time that I went there with my dad. And my dad's not really into archery or anything like that. But when he went there, we were driving back, and he's like, wow, man. Like, and I'm like, oh, what? It's like, it's just very, beautiful to see these people in the middle of Australia, keeping the Ottoman legacy and tradition and history and, all. And like he goes, you see Muslims from, Bosnian background, all different colours, backgrounds, ethnicities, races come together and keeping, this tradition alive. He goes, it's amazing, And then that's when I was like, wow, I never looked at it like that. But
when you said that to me, I just thought about the hadith that there's strength in archery.
Yeah.
Like, it's a different take. There's a strength in archery.
Yeah, 100%. And it brings us together, like, because, we don't have nationalism in us as an ummah. Like, some of the closest brothers that I got right now,
It's an international fruit salad.
100%, bro. That's what I love. Like, if I was nationalistic and I said, only Turks, I only hang out with Turks, I only take from Turkish, craftsmen or whatever, you can't get anywhere because, some of the most advanced craftsmen in Ottoman archery, from Norway, from Europe, from like, and you
from
these
outback Australia.
And 100%.
Mama, you're fine.
It's okay.
No. So like, what nationalism does is it limits your knowledge, like who you take knowledge from, which is ridiculous. You know, you can learn from everyone, and as Muslims, like, it brings us together, bro. You know, Chinese Muslims, Turkish Muslims, Pakistani Muslims, Arab Muslims, Kurdish Muslims.
That's
like,
incredible.
You know,
Yeah.
I remember the day that I was there. I was shooting with one of the brothers, and he's like, we were just talking, and he's like, oh, what's your background? What's your ethnicity? I said, I'm Turkish. And he goes, oh, you know, I'm Kurdish. And I gave him a hug, bro. We hugged, and I was like, oh, you know, mashallah, you know. And then he says to me, he's like, doesn't matter, bro. We're brothers in Islam. Like, doesn't matter if you're Kurdish, if you're Turk, if you're Arab, whatever. We're brothers in Islam, and that's what keeps us as brothers. Like, and we just don't worry about the rest.
I think on that beautiful note, I think we should we should end it.
Inshallah, yeah, so Jazakumullah khairan for joining us on this incredible journey, you know, through outback Australia, Sydney, and, you know, back home in our roots in Melbourne, Turkey. You know, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put benefit in all of our efforts, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide everyone who's listening to this to not only be the best person they can, but also give back to the community and, you know, benefit others, you know, by sharing your knowledge, by sharing what you know. And not only that, but, you know, sharing, you know, your most, how would you say, deepest experiences with them through motherhood, you know? You know, we were out in the middle of, you know, places we've never been before, but we were welcomed like brothers, and you never know what kind of experiences can come from that. So this is just the beginning of many, many, many experiences in the future, whether it be in the form of podcasts, which we'll be posting regularly, or experiences we share in the club or through our online content. Us at Archery Ascension really, really do hope to make a transformation in all of your lives, not only through the means of archery, but, you know, through the means of character and, you know, cultural production, essentially, you know, changing the way that archery, Islam, sports, spirituality is even seen in the nature of the world. You know, so may this be a big means of benefit for everyone. I'll throw it. I don't think it's fair to throw the president out of this as either in a closing words, a closing dua, or anything that we really.
Yeah. Well, thank you for joining us. We'll see you again next week. That's it. No, but we sincerely pray and hope that everyone that was listening got something good out of this. Yeah. And please, like, you know, comment, let us know what you thought, and please come and visit us at Archery Ascension at the club once coronavirus is over. And for all of you, we pray that you have, like, you know, you stay safe, you stay healthy, and for our brothers and sisters that are across the world that are having it tough, you know, our thoughts and our prayers are with you, and we stand at night with you and for you. And just as we all sat here together, we can sit somewhere else together in a better place. And yeah, all the best. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين